Hey demons, it's your girl Lucy, and as many of you know, I really like storytelling and writing and doing all of that. And I'm even making my own web series. I'm working on the pilot called Villains in Training, and I have a whole world made for that. And even though not everything in the world will come up in the web series or be very relevant to it, I still just enjoy making more for the world and enjoy thinking of little other stories for characters and groups that would exist in here, even if they're not going to be in the web series. And it's hard to do that when you're also in school, when you have homework. So one thing that I thought I might start doing is basically in English class, they have us write stories. We haven't gotten into a lot of narrative writing, but a lot of the times, like almost every week, she has us write a short vocabulary story where we have to insert our vocabulary words into a story. And yeah, that's it. That's the only direction we get. So I use that time because I'm working on homework as well to just enjoy writing and write stories. And I oftentimes make it so that they could be in the world that I'm creating because that's just what I like to think about and is what motivates me to work on homework. So I figured since it's in that world, why don't I share those stories with you and then try and like expand on it and actually think what it would mean to be in this world, what like type of society is this person in, what is this character, there's a lot of things. So I thought that I would read to you this short story today and then go into the world building that I was thinking about surrounding this story. Also, like I said, there is vocabulary words, which I don't know exactly why we're doing vocab words in high school. I thought that we stopped that in like elementary school, but I have vocab words apparently. So if there's any words that like stick out as being a little bit weird, it's because I had to put in vocab words, and I might have used a bit different of way of writing or whatever, dialogue, whatever you call it. I might have done things a little bit differently if I didn't have to incorporate these vocab words, but I did. So anyway, let's get into the story. It's not that long. It should only take me a few minutes. The compulsion to leap out of the window next to her and soar into the night sky was overwhelming. No matter how hard she tried to focus on what the head witch was droning on about, her mind always drifted back to what it would be like to weave through the stars with the wind in your hair, making everything back home seem so small. Her, as her mother would say, abysmal behavior and the grades of a toad precluded her from attaining her first broom. An unnecessary retribution, if you asked her. She was the best in her grade, in her entire school of magic, and everyone knew it. But she learned it only led to trouble. She nearly fell asleep thinking about the lecture she had gotten on using her powers responsibly and appreciating the history and knowledge that comes along with it. But she tuned out most of that. It wasn't her fault the other kids couldn't keep up, but now it felt like everyone was so far ahead, and she was the one playing catch-up. All because some adults thought they were better because they had been around when brooms were sticks and cauldrons were made from animal bones, or something like that. Watching the other kids walk around with such pride, flashing around the newest model broomsticks as if they bought them themselves and not their spineless parents, was infuriating. It was like they thought they had impunity now, as if every witch doesn't have a broom at this point. Well, everyone did, except her. That's when a piercing screech echoed through the dull classroom, and the kids around her were suddenly in a track competition to see who could get to lunch first. She was unsure if there was homework, but she was sure she could conjure up something next class before the head witch noticed. Shoving scrolls hurriedly in her bag, she slung it around one shoulder as she headed out of class. Ancient Runes class was in a dingy, forgotten part of the school's basement that students were known to disappear in. Rumors said that their ghosts still roam the hallways, searching for the next lost student they can have as a forever friend. She thought it was ridiculous. She was in the middle of ridiculing the stupidity of her classmates when something caught her attention. She turned to face a deteriorating stone wall that looked like it was built well over 1,000 years ago. Something was emanating from it, a sort of ambiance, not from the wall itself, but from what was behind it, compelling her to examine it closer, to reach whatever it was hiding. Oddities such as this were not uncommon in a place so full of forgotten history, and she had learned that exploring such peculiar occurrences would lead to great risk and even greater reward. A smile spread across her face as she looked closer, recognizing the buzz of magic coming off of the stones. She coughed as she brushed her hand over the rough surface, sending dust into the air. When the dust settled, she was able to make out a line of ancient text engraved into the bricks. For thou who are responsible enough to wield this power, utter the spell every witchling first learns. For thou who are not, remember that good things come to those who wait. She read aloud. Well, that first one sure sounds like me. She grinned, pulling out her wand. The first spell every witch learns. It had to be some basic beginner spell. It clearly wasn't important enough for her to remember. She had mastered spells most high schoolers hadn't when she was 5. It seemed awfully arrogant to assume everyone was struggling with levitation spells when they were a witchling. So she began firing off any basic spell she could think of. Levitation spells, light spells, defense spells, nothing. Oh, for magic's sake, she was wasting her lunch. With aggravated impatience, she lifted her wand and used a teensy-weensy explosion and saw it open to a small room on the inside. Whoever made this thing clearly wasn't very adept at their job if they hadn't even put any prevention spells to stop witches from bypassing their riddle. Hoisting herself through the crack, she landed on smooth stone floors on the other side. The smell of damp air that clearly hadn't seen the outside in years washed over her. The whole place felt old, and so thick with age that it made it hard to move. Illuminating her wand to see through the darkness, she beheld a dazzling broomstick. Smooth wood, neat bristles, and even crystalline bits woven through it that sparkled even in the suffocating shadows. It was gorgeous. There was no paranoia or hesitation in her decision to grab it. It felt cool and comfortable in her palm. It felt right. This was what she had been waiting for. Finally, she would be a real witch. She had never felt so light as when she floated across the room, phasing through the wall in her joy, ready to show everyone what she had found, once she found her way out of this basement. I am now realizing something upon rereading this story, that originally I said she was going to like ancient runes class or something, and then she was complaining that she was wasting her lunchtime. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I maybe should have paid a bit closer attention to that, but overall, I like the story. I was not planning to have her like get trapped in the basement forever and die or whatever happened at the end. That was not the plan for this. I didn't even plan for her to find this broomstick hidden in the school. But you know, I might, maybe I was in a little bit of a dark place. Maybe I was feeling a little bit like writing a spooky story. Okay, nobody judge me. I have a lot of ideas for how I can actually integrate this into my world, and I'm gonna get into that now. The first thing I want to talk about is the ending. Made it seem like she was mentioning ghosts beforehand, and how there was rumors that there were ghosts in schools, that students had gotten lost in this underground basement part, were now roaming the hallways looking for their next victim, all of that, and she didn't really believe it. And then at the end, of course, I heavily implied that she turned into a ghost. She was phasing through a wall, and she couldn't find her way out of the basement. I do not know, even though I'm the one that wrote this, if she actually turned into a ghost or not. Because in my story, I don't want to confirm or deny if there is an afterlife or not. I want, much like in the real world, there to be people that have different opinions on that. I want there to be different religions. There can be atheists. There are people that are agnostic. There are people that believe in an afterlife and have a specific rituals and things like that. And there's a ton of different opinions, and I'm not going to confirm or deny either of them. I might get into it with how that reflects their character and all of that. I might not. I just overall want to leave that part open-ended. So I figured that I cannot actually have her turn into a ghost if I want to not confirm if there is an afterlife. So I decided to come up with a sort of different creature that I called Hollowkin. Basically what they do is they're sort of like, you know, Dementors from Harry Potter. They're sort of like that in the way that I'm picturing them, with like cloaks and darkness and like sucking joy out of you and all of that. I think they would be very miserable creatures that are constantly stuck between life and death. Like I mentioned before, that there is that magic kind of exists between the realm of fantasy and reality. And I think this one would exist between the two realms, sort of life and death, being it's there, it exists, but it's not really. It can't interact with the physical world. It constantly feels it's cold. It doesn't have like blood. It's sort of lifeless. They sort of just wander around. And the one thing that they can think about is the fact that they want to be alive. it makes me really sad that they're not alive, honestly, because they didn't choose to have this unlife. So basically, what they try and do is they try and lure people to them to touch a specific cursed object. Like this, for this girl, is the broom. One of them was probably watching her and learned that as a broom, so that they like created a not real broom, but in accepting their gift, she allowed them to take over her body. And that's why it's sort of, her soul is now out of her body and will just be watching her as she goes around her life, but it's not her. And honestly, that thought kind of scares me. I think that would be really terrifying if somebody that I knew like wasn't actually the person that I knew. And how these hollow can work is, I put this riddle, not really a riddle. I'm not very clever at coming up with riddles. I put this riddle at the beginning that said like, only those who are responsible should take this, blah 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 blah, all of that. And I think part of how the Holokin would work is that they have to like put a sort of rules on it, and if the person like breaks that rules or accepts their terms, that's when they're allowed into their body. That's what grants them access. And her taking the broomstick is what, she was like ignoring the rules. She's not responsible very clearly, which is why she hadn't had her broomstick yet. She didn't heed their warning to wait, and now they took over her body, and she is now half dead, half alive, which honestly I would consider a fate worse than death, because she is never able to be put at rest. She's in this state where she's just like constantly watching those she care about have to grieve her death and try and communicate with them, but she can't. She's like in this cold, dark, empty space where there's no real warmth or light, and she just like craves things in life, whether it's sunlight or whether it's food, and she just can never have it. She can never have that sort of happiness again because she made this choice. And that is dark. I feel bad. Like, I know I made her irresponsible, but oh my god, she's like 15. Oh, I feel so bad for her. So that's how I came up with what the actual end of the story was. But with another thing I want to talk about is this, she clearly is at a school that is not Gold Sky's school for like becoming a hero and learning magic there. It's a very different school where there are all like witches, and there's head witch and there's broomsticks, which isn't as common in the societies I've explored in this world so far. So I wanted to get into that and what exactly I pictured that as. So I thought that they likely are a pretty isolated group, and I think they would live in an island off the coast of Gravebloom, which means that it would be very, very rich with magic in the way that that forest is, and they are able to like live in there. Actually, I might even make them living in Gravebloom. I haven't decided yet, because an important thing about the society is that they very, very much value the old way of life. No technology or modern technology works there. They rely on all of the old ways of doing magic and all of that, and they're trying really hard to preserve their traditions, which is why they're so cut off from the rest of the world. They're just doing their own thing. But they are very, very talented magic users, and I honestly just kind of picture it as Hogwarts, but it's going to be better, because I don't think people are the biggest fan of J.K. Rowling. I'm going to do it better, I swear. So basically this school, how it works is you have to get accepted into it, and basically what they look at to get accepted is heavily based on bloodline. They have been isolated for so many years that they don't really accept outsiders anymore, because I see it as like breaking their way of life. They want kids that are descendants of witches that were in their society to begin with to be raised here, to be raised to value their traditions, which is likely why this character I had in the story really, really didn't fit in, because, or was struggling or was looked down upon by elders, because she really did not care about the tradition. She was way too wild, all of that. I think the society would be considered wise. They have a lot of witches that are very, very old and have lived and seen the world basically being created, and they're old enough to remember very extremely ancient ways of doing things, and they try their best to preserve that. And they're seen as one of the best schools for getting all of that knowledge for the ancient use of magic. They are a bit behind everyone in modern technology, but like the knowledge they have, they are extremely valued for that. And on the odd chance that they do let outsiders in, that is considered a huge honor to be accepted into their ranks and all of that. So, oh, there's another thing. The way that they use magic, I would consider, is through magic that's in nature, and then basically using that, but sort of with permission, like a give and take. So you know how, I'm going to reference Harry Potter again, you know how the wands in Harry Potter, they're described as having like unicorn hair or like a phoenix feather in the wands, these magical beings, and then the wizards use those wands to make magic. I kind of picture it something like that. Like if you manage to go and befriend a dragon and it gifts you one of its scales, then that could help you do magic. But you cannot take it. Or you technically can, but that would be very, very looked down upon in their society. So they use that a lot by taking gifts from the animals that they're so close to, especially because the forest that they live in, maybe, I haven't decided if they're on an island or a forest, probably, now that I'm thinking about it, is in Grave Bloom, which I have said in a previous video is very, very magical and all of that, and it doesn't let in people that don't value nature and magic in its purest form, and the freedom and the animals and everything of life. So that's why they really, really respect animals and everything around them, and they don't want to just take magic as people in Gold Sky and other societies are doing. They really value everything else's life, and they think that they have to earn that magic. And I think that's really nice. Honestly, thinking about the society, I really like it. I think they could maybe use some cell phones or something, but overall their ideas are pretty good. But they likely, if I do end up exploring this society, it will likely change a bit with getting a bit more welcoming to outside ideas and things. But also I would like to keep that strong core belief in respecting their ancestors and keeping traditions and everything like that. Before I end this video, I want to go in just a few things that I thought that I could add to the school, just like fun little things. You know how, yet again, in Harry Potter, they have owls to carry letters? Now, technology does not work in this school, or maybe in Grave Bloom at all. Technology doesn't work. So I figured we need something sort of like that to have them at least have some connection to the outside world, and also for the students going to the school to be able to like contact their parents. And I wanted some ideas for this in the comments. I was considering doing it with a different kind of bird, like using hawks or falcons or something like that. I think falcons could be really cool and fast, or I could use like a fantasy creature. I have been thinking about doing this video where I design fantasy creatures, fantasy beings, things like that. So I might do that in that video, but I basically need a way to transfer letters. If anybody in the comments had any ideas or any ideas for animals that I can come up with that would do that job, that would be greatly appreciated. I also had this little idea where basically the school, it's like endless weaving hallways, and it's so confusing that you can easily get lost in it, to the point where students are told to stay to very, very specific parts of the school. Do not go wandering off like this girl did, because oh, does that not end well? You will get lost forever. And I can just see them having like markers or like even tying ropes to people to have them not get lost, because even like the oldest people there have forgotten how the hallways go, and it's very complicated. So yeah, if anybody has like ideas for rooms that could just be in this school, things that could be hidden, little secrets within its walls, I would be very interesting to hear like what you would put in just a full-on witch and wizard magic school. But yeah, that's basically all I have for this video. Thank you for watching. Bye guys.